Hello and well met. This is Laren with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today, I'm going to be taking a look at the Lost Mine of Phandelver and Phandelver Below. Essentially, you have two adventures. They are similar, except for they've changed some of the content between the two. The original Lost Mine of Phandelver was more or less a standalone adventure that was meant for like a starter pack. Some of the things that it included were a little bit different encounters and NPCs. Mainly, I noticed that the first encounter was changed or updated in Phandelver and Below. And then also the pre-gens did not come with the Phandelver and Below. So Lost Mine of Phandelver has pre-gens built into it, which is what these characters are on the side there that I have on the combat tracker. And then if you're going to use the Phandelver and Below adventure, you're going to have to build your own characters to start with. So there's some differences there. Also, the sound packs that come with the Sirenscape subscription, you'll have to create your own for the Phandelver and Below module. The one that's on the Fansground store is actually for the original Lost Mine of Phandelver. However, if you understand what you're doing and you have some patience and time, you can actually adapt a lot of those sounds and the links over to the new adventure. So if you already have Lost Mine of Phandelver and you have the sound pack, you can essentially take some of those context links and add them as an additional supplement to your Lost Mine or the Phandelver and Below Shattered Obelisk. So you have a choice here. You either want to treat these separately or treat them as kind of a continuation of each other. But there are some differences, and a lot of them are things that may or may not take a lot of work. If you run the adventure as it is, it's probably a lot easier to digest, not as complicated, not as frustrating. However, if you want to have the same sort of experience that you were going to get with like the original Lost Mine of Phandelver, it's going to take a little effort on your part. I don't know if Smiteworks has actually worked on the new updated Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure, the Phandelver and Below, for the sound packs. I know that Sirenscape has updated their library to add the additional elements for the sound. But as far as the Fantasy Grounds pack goes, this original sound set is designed for the original adventure. So just kind of keep that in mind. So if you buy that, you're going to have to adapt it or relink things to the Phandelver and Below area. And that's going to take a little bit of practice and knowledge if you haven't done that before. So what's kind of neat is if you own the Lost Mine of Phandelver and you're just going to run the classic adventure, if you come across a section where you're going to be using the adventure, when you go to the chapters, the sound context menu will play, and you'll be able to incorporate the audio into your adventure. So if that's something you're into or something that you would like to incorporate in your games, you can do that. So it just kind of depends on, you know, what your needs are and that sort of thing. But you can play that, and you know, if you're up to it and you're able to adapt those for your needs. So this is the online player, and it's playing the audio from the actual adventure module, but that just has a sound link. So a lot of people were buying this initially thinking that everything is done for you. Well, it's not quite that simple for the audio. You have to go in and activate it. You have to update it. There's some things that have to take place. But once you have it, it's not too bad. And when you skip around, you can change the context menu. So if you went to like the Goblin Trail, the context menu changes, and then you can actually trigger the Goblin Trail audio from here. So it's just another tool to kind of present your story and to give you some more immersion, that sort of thing. You don't have to run the adventure with audio, but this is just something you can do with the original. The newer one is more of a full-length campaign, and as of now, what is this, July 2024, there's no SoundLink module for this yet, so it might be that you know, Smiteworks is too busy to do it right now, or they don't have a person converting these. But whatever the issue is, or whatever the challenges are, I'm certain they'll have it at some point. But for the time being, you can make your own. And I can do a video on that and how to kind of make your own sound context menus for your adventures. I think it's important to learn that, and this way you don't have to rely on or wait on someone else to do it for you. So you can possibly kind of set up your own, and it's kind of nice. But if you have the sound settings on and you have everything active, you can filter the sound packs. So if you use the drop down here and under the sound menu, you can actually click on this arrow and scroll down, and I can go to Lost Mine of Phandelver, and that will give me the kind of the separation, so you don't have a gazillion links there. You just have the ones that go to Lost Mine, and that kind of helps narrow down the list a little bit more. And then from here, you can decide if you want to use these links, or you can make your own, or whatever you want to do. But this is kind of a way to embellish your games and make them a lot more fun and interesting. The other thing is that I would like to do, if I had the time and energy to do it, is to swap out the tokens and the maps. So that's a lot of work. Like, you have to go through all the NPCs and update all the tokens. So it's not an easy task. So if you come over to NPCs and you filter this to Shattered or D&D Phandelver and Below, there are 5 pages of NPCs. And each one of these likely has the default for the token. So let's just bring up the Hobgoblin, for example. And the tokens that come with this are not bad. It already has a token camera view. So I'd probably leave those two, but the flat token, I would probably replace that with my own. So instead of a POG, I might want the top-down 3D version. The problem with those is that, or the challenge would be that those have a hard time seeing those on a map. They kind of get washed out. That's why more people prefer these POGs, because they have this ring around it, and it makes it a lot more visible when you're moving around on a map. But what I was proposing earlier was to take some of the content that I got from the DM's Guild. So this is some Phandelver and Below assets. This is a collaboration between Heroic Maps and Devon Knight. So when you buy those packs, you get the updated maps, or the new version of the maps, and then you also get tokens with it. And then you get these PDF resources, which are essentially in addition to, so for instance, this altered adventure alterations, you can add this in here into your games. They're just like tables that gives you additional things to look at and to work with for ideas for running your adventure. So there's the first original set comes with these first 4. And then you have a DM resource pack, and then it goes from 5 to 8. So there's a chapter 8, there's a chapter 6. So these kind of continue from the original first 4 chapters in the original Lost Mine. So this one has just some additional tables, and this talks about, you know, what's in the resource pack. So there's some updated maps for the Goblin Ambush, the Old Owl Well, and Wyvern Tor, and then they've included different things. So this one just kind of talks to you about the updates and things that have changed, so you can kind of adapt to it. And then there's some tables in here, and then there's some suggestions on running some of these encounters. So it's kind of neat that they have that. And then on top of that, this is all the tokens that can be put into Fantasy Grounds, and these come from Devon Knight. So this is a combination of all the sets, including the newer and the older stuff. So there's a ton of them. Let's see, how many do we got here? 226 tokens. So if you want to spend your time doing those and replacing them out with the flat tokens in the NPC list, you probably won't use every single one of these, but quite a few of them if you want to update it. This would include both adventures, And one of the things that I would prefer is to put a base on these guys, so that way they'd be more visible. So I would take something like that, and then I would probably use Canva or something and do all the medium small creatures first. So that would entail quite a bit of work, but I'd already kind of have a base. And what I would do is sort of like, for instance, these are tokens that I was working on that may help you with your work. And that was the printable heroes assets. But then you might also have other things like there's Baldur's Gate stuff that you can load up. You can have whatever content you want, but you can also add these little bases. So I'm going to create a design, and what I'm going to do is do a custom size. And for a token that's WebP format, you want it to be 256 by 256. So that's essentially the dimensions that you want to work with. And what I normally do is I'll go like maybe 300. And or if you need to, you can make it a little bit smaller, a little bigger. But this is going to be my canvas, and the reason I make it a little bit bigger in case you have some overhang. So that's the only thing I could suggest on that is if you're going to do this and spend the time on it, you got to kind of compensate for some of that stuff. So let's do, let's just take one of the iconic characters. So let's pull in, let's do, let's see. We'll do Gundren, I guess. Or no, here's Larno Glassstaff Albric. So let's do his token. So another thing about this is you don't have to do them all at once. You can do this by chapter. So if you only need to worry about chapter 1, you can just do these first. But I think you get overwhelmed if you try to do all this at once. And I think that's part of the issue with doing any sort of additional supplements or adding on to your adventures is it just you add a whole bunch of overhead to your prep. So this would be kind of a long-term thing for me. If I was going to do this, probably take this and kind of stagger it out over a few months, get everything put into Fantasy Grounds, then update everything, and then export it as a module. So whenever I wanted to run this adventure, all of that additional work would be done, and I just have to load it with the adventure. And that's the beauty of doing it up front, is then you don't have to worry about it. You just run the adventure. But if you're doing this as you go, it kind of makes it a little bit tougher and a little bit more confusing sometimes. So it kind of depends on what you're trying to do. So let's go with actually let's do, yeah, we're going to do this guy, this Larno Glassstaff. Where'd he go? There we go. Okay, Mr. Glassstaff, where are you? Here we go. Oh, here's Gundren Rockseeker. Let's do this guy. Okay, so this is the token, and being that he's a kind of a smaller stature, kind of dwarf, I'd probably put it in there about like this and center it. And you notice it's not perfect, like it isn't going to go all the way to the edge because this is actually 300 by 300. So I can probably come down a little bit more. There won't be any overhang. And then just center this as best I can. And kind of leave it there once I get it centered. And let's see, we're going to go to center. And then I have a this tokens thing that I can use. And here's more of those tokens. So I can take this token and drag it over here. Use this as my base kind of thing. And then use the tokens in here to set this up. So you can see I've already done some of these. So this is why I was going to add the base to it, so that this gray base, it's kind of transparent as well. And the reason for that is for visibility on the map, because when you're using these tokens, it's hard to see what you're looking at, especially if you're on a stream or something like that. It's harder to see those, or if you have people that have vision problems. But that's how I would do this, is I'd set this up and put all of these bases on here, and then do export them as they are, and then convert them all to WebP in one shot, and that will cut down the file sizes. And then also this will be compliant with the requirements for Fantasy Grounds, and that also helps keep the your storage and your file spaces down. So that's just another thing you can do. Now the maps are another situation that would probably require a bit of work. So let's just, for instance, let's go to Lost Mine of Phandelver, and we want to go and look at the maps that are in here. So if we go over to the images, let's take a look at, let's see, let's filter this out to Maps, Lost Mine of Phandelver, and we'll just do this Cragmaw Castle since most people are familiar with it. So this would be, it comes with the adventure, which there's nothing wrong with this. This map is actually pretty decent. I like the way it looks. It's hand painted. It's the Mike Schley style. But if you really wanted to make this pop and look a little bit more detailed, you can make your own maps, or you can supplement it with other maps that you find, like stuff on the DM's Guild or from the author or the artist or cartographer themselves. So there's some maps here. And what I did is I divided these up by chapters. And I believe that this thing comes up in Chapter 3, I believe. Yeah, so Old Owl Well, here's the Cragmaw Hideout. So this one gives you two variations. So you have a no grid and a grid. So it's up to you, like what you want to use. I prefer to use maps with no grid. And what it would entail, though, is you'd have to add your own line of sight, and you would have to relink all of those little links here. And what I would do is make copies of them and then link them over. And then if you want to use this map instead, just bring up this map. You can even link this map to the map in the original map so that you don't have to dig around looking for it. And then you can use this to share with your players and put your own line of sight, your own details in here. So you can use this one, or you can use your own supplemental ones. I like the way these look. They're a little bit more refined for virtual tabletops. And the other thing about it is that these are actually pretty good sized maps. So this one is almost too big. It's 4200 by 4200. That's pretty big. So that's the other thing you have to consider when you're using these type of maps, is they might be a little bit big, but the quality would be there, meaning dimensionally large. So some of these, like this one's 8400 by 5600. So you'd have to do something with that. So this is the area of Thunder Tree with no grid. That's a pretty good sized map because it's an entire village. So what I would do with something like this is I would reduce this down. I wouldn't put a grid on it, or if I did, it would just be very loose. And then just kind of use some glass or something so that the characters can't just walk through the walls. And then maybe around these things here, put some line of sight around those. Try to keep it really simple and don't have a bunch of line of sight and that kind of thing on a map that's this large. These are the ones that are typically problematic with Fantasy Grounds, because this dimension right here is way too big. It's 8400 by 5600. That's well beyond the recommended size for Fantasy Grounds. They want you to keep it around 4K. This one's around 8K, so that's pretty large. So you kind of have to be careful when you're adding maps to Fantasy Grounds, or at least keep it in mind that you don't want these things to be giant as far as the dimensions go. File size wise, you can convert it down. So like this image here, if I change this to WebP, it would probably be about half the size, probably about 1.25 megabytes instead of 5, and it would be in a WebP format. So these are just things that you can do to add to your prep and your work, but to might make it look nicer, but at the same time you're adding a lot of overhead work, so you have to decide what's important to you. So something like this would take me a long time to do. It probably, even with all the AI tools and all that stuff, it probably take me about a month to do all the sound, all the tokens, and update all the maps. If you really wanted to go all out, I mean, I'm just saying that that's the type of work you'd be facing. So, creating your own tokens or updating them and then adding your own sound links and all that stuff would be quite a bit of work. So it sometimes is better just to run it as it is and don't even worry about it, because that you're just adding potential aggravation to yourself and you may not even benefit from it. What if you do this whole map and you don't even end up running it? That's kind of what you run into. So you can either do the whole thing and spread it out over a few months, or you can do one section at a time, like one chapter at a time. That's probably more realistic. And then if you don't make it beyond the first chapter, you're not out all that time. So you kind of have to decide, what your expectations are and what kind of work you want to put into it. So it does take some work, depending on how you want to make this work for you. Hey Dan, how's it going? So just as a reminder that a lot of the stuff I do is just community stuff. This is not an official Fantasy Grounds tutorial, but I do get into the actual work, like what it takes to get there. And I think that that's something that gets skipped over quite a bit with with commercials and advertising and promotion, as they show you the end product, but you don't really get a full understanding of what it actually takes to get there. And that's one of the things that most companies are going to do, is they're not going to show you the difficulty or the challenges. They're going to show you what it looks like when you're done with all the work. And I think that my focus is more on the actual work and how to do it, as opposed to this is what it looks like, and it's nice to see that, but at the same time, it's not realistic. And when someone gets into actually using the product, and they'll look at it and go, "Oh darn, this is a lot more than I expected." So I don't know. I think I err on the side of caution more and try to be a little bit more transparent about it, and a lot less like commercialized, and not trying to sell anything really, but I sell you the idea that it's going to take work if you want to make it look good. And that's really what it comes down to. SmiteWorks isn't going to do all that extra stuff because that's not what's included in the original license. So they're going to give you the maps they're given. They're going to make the pogs. They did kind of go out of their way and make all these third-party assets so it works with the setup that they have. So that's commendable. I mean, they didn't have to do that. They could have just left it as a pog token, So there are some things they do to make it work and adapt for Fantasy Grounds, but they kind of have to keep it at a minimum because it's just way too much overhead and the return on investment's not there. So it's kind of up to developers, third-party content creators, and GMs to supplement and kind of embellish their own adventures. So I was a little bit disappointed with Phandelver and Below. I didn't like the changes they made to it, the beginning parts of it, and I don't know why they left out the pre-gens. I think that was a nice addition for the original. So these are the characters that you get with the original. Do you GM any games, or you stay? I mostly stay busy with Academy stuff. I'm going to run a couple games for the Fantasy Grounds Academy. What do you call it? The Founders Day weekend. But I generally get frustrated with running games only because I don't get the attendance. Like, I always have people that don't show up. And then also I put all this effort and work into it, and then it doesn't go anywhere. And that's kind of disheartening. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to run into games in about a year. I used to have a paid game, but that kind of fizzled out, and it was over a year long, and I kind of drug it out too long. And then one of our players passed away, and a couple people quit, so it just kind of fell apart after about a year. But that was a lot more, I guess, a lot more consistent. We played twice a month, and it's got to the point where people stopped showing up, and even though they were paying and stuff. So it just, I don't know, it kind of got weird, and I just, I tried the paid thing, and then I looked at running games for money on like Start Playing. But when I read their terms and conditions, and then I read all the stipulations and stuff, I said, no way. There's no way I'm going to do that. I'd prefer to just give someone my PayPal account and say, here, donate. As I just looked at that, I guess it helps organize, and it kind of gives you a filter as to like what kind of GM, what type of play style you want. But I think if you advertise it in the Fantasy Grounds, looking for player section, and you fill that out properly, and you kind of let the people know what kind of players you're looking for too. I think that's an important step. But to answer your question, I'm staying busy with a lot of these videos and Academy stuff, but I also spend time like working on content, and mostly for myself, and kind of learning the platform. That's why I do this, is just to learn all the little ins and outs, because there's so many nuances to this. It depends on how deep you want to get into it, but this tends to be time consuming if you want to really add to it and put that polish on there. If you don't, yeah, I'll keep an eye out for it. Gladly, Phil. Yeah, no problem, Dan. I'd love to play with you. I kind of like the kind of traditional play style more. I like narrative and theater of the mind, but honestly, I call it theater of the lazy, because what it seems like to me in most cases when people run it like that is they don't have anything prepared. They don't have a lot of the assets ready to go. It's kind of like, I don't know, I can do it. Like, I can run adventures like that, but I don't know if the experience is going to be good enough. The story would have to be really good, and your delivery would need to be pretty nice. Because if you're unprepared and you don't have anything going, it kind of sucks. And I don't know. I kind of like having some visuals. I don't necessarily have to have a battle map. I can use any image in the game to present my story. But without all that, and you're just doing everything out of the combat tracker, I think it can get kind of boring after a while, especially if it's not your turn and you're not engaged in the story, and you're really just kind of wanting to fight stuff. That's kind of what ends up happening, is you only appeal to maybe half the players, and then the other half, they get kind of burned out, and they don't want to play anymore. There's just nothing to stimulate them. So I think having a virtual tabletop kind of helps facilitate that. I don't mind doing theater of the mind for stuff in between, but not the whole thing. I think that's kind of depends on what game system too. Like, if I was going to run some of the older classic games, I would do a lot more theater of the mind and graph paper, and kind of doing it the old school way. But if you're going to have a virtual tabletop, you might as well use the power. That's the way I look at it. And there are times when you don't need a map, but there are many times where you could really use at least an image to kind of show what's going on and kind of help you tell your story. Yeah, I just feel like I'm making up for a lot, so I'm trying to gather. Yeah, Dan, that's a thing, man. That takes a while. It took me, honestly, the way I learn and absorb things, I think Fantasy Grounds took me a couple years just to get my mind wrapped around its capabilities, the limitations. And then you have the rule set stuff. And then you have the technical stuff, like, how do you put these things together? And, so it's a whole thing. Like, it just depends on how immersed you want to be into it. Like, if you just buy an adventure and run it as it is, and don't add a bunch of stuff to it, it's pretty simple. It's not bad. Yeah, me too. The art definitely pulls me in. Book looked like homework to me. Yeah, it sure does. It is. It's a little homework for sure. But one thing I'm happy with is that it helped me up my skills. So before, I was just snagging images off the internet, but now I'm able to kind of create stuff, and that's kind of one of the things I like to do, is content creation, because that's really the fun. I think I get more out of that than just playing. I don't know why, but I just like to create stuff, and I kind of like telling the story more than anything. Doing that visually and through the dice rolls and through Fantasy Grounds and the maps and stuff, that really does it for me. I guess that's my favorite part, is just getting people involved, getting them immersed, onboarding, getting people used to what type of stuff to expect when they're running the adventures, and all those sort of things. So it's kind of a balancing act if you want to run games, make content, run a community, have your personal life, and then do all the other stuff too. So you kind of have to pick your battles in a lot of cases. So just try to sort through this type of content, add things to your adventure as you need. Don't create way too much work for yourself. And it's pretty ambitious. If I download all those maps, separate them, add them to Fantasy Grounds, add the line of sight, redo all the links, and then go on to the tokens, put bases on all those, go into each NPC, make a copy, and then add my own custom tokens. And then on the sound dialogue links, try to salvage the ones I want out of the original sound links and then make my own. And then take all of that and export it as a module. That's a lot of work. That's probably a good solid month of work there, if not more. So it just depends on, how much effort you want to put into it. Sometimes it's better just to run the adventure as it is. You just take that and run with it. Don't get too sucked into all this glory and this stuff here, because it can piss you off, and it just kind of makes it to where you don't want to play anymore. And that's not the idea. I mean, if you're not willing to do the work, then don't do it. Don't let it suck you in and piss you off, and it's not worth it. I don't think it's even required or necessary in most cases. The only exception to that might be if you were going to maybe run a professionally paid game that's being streamed. Then I might go through all this effort. But when it comes to just running a game for some friends, I don't know if I'd go through necessarily all of this stuff. But I just wanted to show people that you can, step it up and make it look better. And, you can learn how to use third-party tools to supplement your campaigns, and learn to use the tools in Fantasy Grounds. And you just kind of share what you know with others and help them achieve whatever they're looking for. But some RP heavy stream stuff, I don't mind that, the streaming. But one thing I know for myself is that I get bored when I watch streams. I'm not saying yours is going to be boring, but I can only watch like maybe 10 minutes and then I'm done. So if I'm not playing, I generally can't sit there and watch someone else play for 4 hours. It just isn't my cup of tea. Even if the players are cosplay and they're entertaining, I don't know. I just can't get into it. Yeah, mine would kind of suck too. And what I notice a lot of is like when the streams are happening, you see like 4 people in the GM, but you don't really see anything else. And you might see like the combat tracker, or you might see a map or something, but you don't really get to see the platform very much. So I kind of like to see the actual content, the images and the tokens and all that sort of stuff. So Fantasy Grounds does have, I think if you take and let's just say you're going to run this on a stream, one thing you could do possibly if you don't need the real estate is to scale up the background. I run this pretty small, so it's hard to see and hard to read it. But if you're going to run this on a stream, I think like if you use, for instance, this is the castle, there's the player view. But if you actually set this up to where you can access everything and use the toolbar down below, you can take this image and kind of make it like the background. And that will give you more of the map and less of the background image. And this will make it to where when you move stuff around, it's easier to see it in the stream. Yeah, that's good. And this also helps if you're going to use a projector, or a second account. So you can actually sign in to Fantasy Grounds as a player, and then use a second instance for the display. So you can send this to another monitor or a TV. And then that way, yeah, yep, I hear you. Yeah, so the map in the back is nice, and it makes it easier to see, because a lot of times, you know, during the streams though, you can't see the content very well. You can see like 4 or 5 people, and I don't mind that if they have like costumes and stuff. But if there's just 5 ugly faces up there, I don't know if I want to watch that for 4 hours. But I don't know. It depends on, I guess, what the topic is. Like, if they're entertaining or whatnot. So, but I just think that, you know, it's a choice and kind of like a taste thing. And some people prefer just to see the people, and, you know, they want to see the interaction between those individuals. So, Dan, I don't know what you're trying to post, but the moderator is too high. My stream moderator is high because it had a lot of spam and trolls. And someone say Fantasy Grounds sucks, you know, stuff like that. You know, it's like, so I turned that thing up. So I apologize on that. I don't know exactly what you're trying to put there, but it's moderating the crap out of whatever you're saying there. But anyhow, the main thing of this stream was to show you some of the things that you might want to include in your adventure. So kind of depends. So let's look at the Cragmaw Castle. So here's like the entrance area. And if you click on the map, I believe, I gotta be in play mode. I think I am. I don't know. I don't know why I can't. Oh, I see. Oh, I see. This can be problematic if the pins are right next to this. So let me open up this entrance. So here's the entrance way, and this is the book format. And what you can do here is in the sound context menu. Let's go to the sound. That's the sets. Let's go to context. So this is what comes up when the sound triggers are active. So when I brought up the story entry, it brings up the general content for the Cragmaw Castle. So here's the breaking the door, and here's like a mood that you can change as the players get close to the entrance, if they come through this way. And then if there's a situation where they need to break the doors, there's a one-shot sound that you can play that kind of illustrates that through audio. And then there's also goblin fight. So if you have like an encounter with some goblins, you can trigger that. So that's kind of cool. But the other thing is, if you want the players to have sounds too, then you have to load up like the player's handbook version of the chat triggers for Fantasy Grounds. So these ones are just for the adventure. So if you're gonna use it for immersion, you know, this particular sound set is for the original Lost Mine of Phandelver, and it only is the adventure part of it. So it may not have all the sounds for your players. So that is another module. It's a player's handbook. So if I go into here, and I'm going to type in Sirenscape. Yeah, so there's Lost Mine is what I have loaded, but there's a monster manual. So in case you add your own monsters, you're going to have to load that up, more than likely, if you want the extra sounds. And then there is also the, I think there's a player's handbook. Oh, here's the weapons and spells. That's the one you'd want with your players. So if you're going to have your players attacking or something, you want to have that loaded too. So I'll load that up just in case. And then the monster manual just in case. But the problem with that is sometimes the monster manual and the stuff that's in the adventure can be redundant. So you might get duplication on some of that. But anyways, this is just a kind of a demo. Let's run a little combat here and see what we can do. So let's first of all, I'm gonna the party here, they have to have tokens. it throws off the combat tracker. So you want to make sure you at least have a flat token, because that can be problematic if you don't have something selected. So if I click this flat token, this is the fighter, the folk hero. So this is a someone who has ranged weapons, I believe. So what you can do here is to select a token. Look for the Fantasy Grounds. You can go for the heroic, like Fantasy Grounds Heroes. FG, Sci-Fi, Modern. There's a fantasy one, but then they also have others that are like the 3D tokens, but I'm just going to use the regular fantasy ones. And I'll say that this fighter is a female. She has a bow, essentially. So this is just some of the things that you'll notice when you start playing. You should have tokens. There goes a female druid-like character, even though it's not a druid. I did with a few extra O's and it didn't like it. Okay, so this is just one token. I'm not going to put the whole party on here, but let's drag and drop her right here. And as you see, when I claim the token, it actually has the light of sight on there. And let's grab some goblins. So here's the trapped hall. Here's a rubble trap. So that's cool. Oh, I didn't like that. Unable to load. Lost Mine of Phandelver. Blank image WebP. Huh. Interesting. So there was something going on with that. I think it might have been an image that was attached to this at one time. Let's see what else we got here. That just is a trap. Let's see the goblins. I think they're over here. Yeah, here we go. Here's the goblin encounter. So what we do is add it to the tracker. And then when you do that, those will appear down here in the room where they're supposed to be waiting, kind of. And then they're not visible at this point. But if you have this up, your context menu will be there. So if you go back up to your audio context menu, I'd probably link this to the down here at the bottom so you don't have to keep grabbing it, and maybe locate it here. But this is the goblin. Here's some more goblin stuff. So here's a goblin battle. So this is what we're playing right now. And then if the goblins go first, then obviously they'll be up. So let me roll initiative for this character. So if I was going to play this fighter, I would essentially take the initiative, drag this down to the hotkeys. That way you're not coming back to this page all the time. And then I'll be on the actions tab. And it looks like this one doesn't have ammo, so I'll go ahead and add that. Great sword and the longbow are both two-handed weapons, so we're going to change that. They have second wind and archery as their features for the powers. And I want to see if she has a shield. So go to inventory. And does she have a shield? No, which makes sense because she's wearing, leather armor and carrying a great sword. So we don't need to worry about that. And down below here, you want to change this to combat and actions. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the archery because she's proficient with that, and that'll go on here. And the order is going to be Goblin 2. And I'm going to make them visible by clicking on Show All PCs. And then it can move this one. So we're going to open that door up. And then this one's going to move. And if I want to emulate the NPC movement, I need to hold down the Alt key. Move that. And then through the doorway. And then if it's a good move, like it's not too janky or weird, I'll approve it. And then that individual is going to go up and take the scimitar and take a swipe at her. Wow, he rolled a critical hit. And if you can hear that, it actually made the sound for it, for the critical hit. So now what we're going to do is take the weapon and drop the damage on either the token or the combat tracker. So we'll take this, plus we already hit, so we don't have to worry about that. But let's do the damage. Youch! So that hurt. So we'll go to the next one. Goblin 3, I think, is going to move over and shoot through the doorway. And we're going to put this guy up here so we don't have to worry about it covering anything. And then in the actions here, it has... See, it has an attack roll for a short bow. And I'm going to target the folk hero, see what it looks like. So it looks like you can get through there. You know, if you move your token a little bit, you can get through there. But I'm going to impose a -2 penalty because you're shooting through this doorway, and especially you're shooting through an ally. So you kind of have to shoot over his shoulder into your target or up higher. So I'm going to take a -2, which is kind of like partial cover. Technically, I should probably do -5, but I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. So he moves over, takes a pop shot at the fighter, and she's targeted. So all I have to do is double-click on the attack roll. And it did that targeting by holding down the control key, the right control key. So just double-click now on the short bow. Thank God it missed. Went shoof! Just so it went through and probably went right over her shoulder. So that was good. At least there's that. So I think he'll move up one. Yeah, actually he'll just stay there, because that's about the best target he's going to get. So we'll just leave him there. So the next one is going to come out. So again, I'm going to hold down the Alt key and move him out. I think they can only move 25. No, he can move 30. And he's going to do the same thing. So he's taking the scimitar and kind of running it into the folk hero here. Wow, these guys are rolling really good. So there's the hit. So the scimitar kind of comes out wide and slashes and hits the fighter on her side. And then takes that damage and drop it on there. Okay, so she took a little bit more damage. It's only got 1 hit point left. Can you believe that? So let's go to her turn now. Alright, so being that she's so hurt, like damage-wise, I'm going to use Second Wind, which I believe is a bonus action. On your turn, as a bonus action, you can... Yeah, so let's do that. So I'll just click on that. And that healed some of her, get up to 4. So she got some of her hit points back. But I used that now, so I gotta get rid of it. So that helped her. Now, she can't use her bow at the time because she's got too many people up in her face. So I'm going to use the Great Sword. Just drag the attack roll onto the target from her character sheet, and that was a miss. So the goblin kind of ducked under her big swing. She did like a wild swing out of frustration, and the goblin just kind of went woof right underneath the blade. So I'm going to get rid of... Actually, you know what? I'm going to introduce these guys. So let's bring out the rogue. So he's up here, we'll say, or maybe back over here. He was checking the door. But see, he doesn't have a token, and that can be problematic when it comes to running an encounter like this. So you want to at least have a basic token. So we'll do kind of do this thing here, and I'll take this portrait and go back to this Fantasy Grounds Fantasy. So FG Fantasy is what it's called. And then I'll give him a token. So this is just something you'll learn, is it kind of confuses Fantasy Grounds if you don't have a token in there. Because everything's kind of tied to the token in a sense. So it's important to have that in there. So I want to find kind of a halfling-looking rogue. I think there's a gnome that I use that looks close enough. He's kind of got pointed ears. It looks like a little shifty dude. He doesn't look very happy. I think that fits. the narrative here. And it's another thing about doing these, like during a game, is it can be very like distracting, and it can, you know, this would probably take me longer than to run to combat, which can get ridiculous sometimes. So this is just I'll just grab something here. Let's see. We wanted like a halfling, I guess. But see, there's no search function here, which sucks. So I'm going to have to wing it here and just pick something. I'll just use this dude here. Alright, so here's our rogue. And he hasn't been seen yet, so they haven't noticed him just yet. Their passive perception is like 9 or 10 or something like that. Let me look at the stat block. Yeah, it's pretty low. It's like 9, so if he had rolled a stealth check prior, they'd have to beat that. So I'm just going to roll the stealth check just to say that that was he was hiding. And on his actions tab, he's got a few things on here. So I'm going to go to actions and combat. And he has the brave thing, so he's got advantage versus frightened. He's got the halfling nimbleness, so he can move through smaller spaces. He's got the lucky trait, so he can re-roll if you roll a 1 for attack roll or ability check or saving throw. And then naturally stealthy, as you can attempt to hide even if you're just obscured only by a creature and such. So I'm just going to have him, he's going to have the hide action on him. And I'm going to have him set up for a sneak attack. So the short bow is two-handed. And I'm going to apply the sneak attack effect if he makes the attack roll. So taking this particular rogue, I'm going to drag and drop the damage on the target. So in this case, what I'll do is I'll hold down the control key and make sure that I have him selected, and then I'm going to hold the control key. So he should technically be able to hit the target if he moves a little. But if he moves, I'm going to have to re-roll the stealth check. So I'll have him move there. And then on his character sheet, I'll have him roll stealth. And this would be a skill that I would link if I was playing this player, because you're probably going to use that quite a bit. So he has to beat a 9 for the passive perception anyway. So probably just drag and drop it down to the dice tower. That way the players don't see it. And essentially is hidden, or at least not noticed. So he can do the sneak attack. The conditions are met in this case. So what I'll do is do the attack roll first. So I'm just going to double click on the short bow. Oh, what do you know? It's a 20. Critical hit. And now what I'm going to do is apply the sneak attack effect, which will expire after we roll. So I'll do this 1d6 plus 3. Fantasy Grounds is going to calculate the critical hit and the damage for the double damage, essentially. So let's do it. Oh yeah, look at all those dice. Beautiful. So he took him out. If you heard, I don't know if you heard the Wilhelm in the background, but so on Fantasy Grounds here in the combat tracker, it took him out. So he's unconscious and prone. I don't plan on reviving him or continuing with him, so I'm just going to remove him from the combat tracker to keep it clean. And it leaves a blood splatter, so at least I know where he went down. So if we want to go back and loot, we can do so. So that's just a preliminary thing. Now he's going to move back, and that's his turn. So the wizard, we'll say that she's not there yet. And the cleric is now going to enter the battle. And he's coming through the door. So I'd probably have him over here somewhere. So go ahead and drag and drop him onto the map. We'll say he just arrived. And I double click on his character sheet. And again, you got to set up you got to have a portrait. So this is where, you know, this is something you want to do before the game starts. Because as you can see, I'm kind of wasting time by doing this. But, you know, it kind of shows some of the challenges that you might face if you're kind of running off the seat of your pants. You know, it's something that you'll have to deal with eventually. So, oops, I didn't want that one. Ah, I don't think that's the cleric, unless he turned into a demon. That's hilarious. Because I double-clicked on this one, you have to single-click, or it's going to select it, something you don't want. So if you single-click on it, it will open the folder up without selecting. Yeah, see, it did this first one. So I'll do this guy for our dwarf here. He's a dwarven healer. So what I'm going to do with him is, since she's so hurt, he's going to walk over, or, saunter over there. He's got his weapon out, but on his actions tab, he's got some spells. So I'm going to go to preparation. Yeah, everyone calls you the angry cleric. Rrr! Yeah. So guiding bolt, healing word, and probably sanctuary for first level. And then he's got some other traits that I need to activate. So if I go to combat and actions, I want to make sure that I put on the Dwarven Resilience, which is the poison benefit there. And these are first level spells, but they're domain spells, so they're always prepared. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop the cure wounds onto the target, which will be the fighter, to help her out. And she healed 8, which fully heals this target here. And then I need to check off spell slots. So that's basically how you'd run that. And then you wanted to move, you can, but he's already moved into the range of this goblin, so we'll just leave him there. So let's say the human noble's still outside, doinking around. We don't know what he's doing. So he's not there yet. Alright, so the goblin sees what's going on here, is going to try to take another pop shot. And this goblin already has her targeted, so you don't have to do much other than repeat the attack roll. So double-clicking on the ranged attack. Wow, that's another good roll. And whammo. So it's heavy damage. And this, luckily, she was healed, because now she's back to only having 5 hit points. So this guy's jumping up and down, all excited that his shot found the mark. And this goblin here is going to engage with the cleric now that he showed up. So I'm just going to drag the scimitar attack onto the dwarf. And, oh, he hit. So dwarf has a better armor class, but he actually scissored that thing in there and kind of got in between his plated armor. And now he's going to do some damage here. So he took 5 points of damage. Ouch. So the fighter is going to try to cleave this goblin here. So again, I'm just going to have her drag and drop the attack roll onto the token. And that was a miss. So again, she tried to attack him, and this guy ducked under her sword swing there. That sucked. So now the rogue is going to probably going to move up, and this time just do a regular attack instead of a ranged attack. So, or instead of a sneak attack. So he's going to move up here, and it's kind of blocked right now. But what I'm going to do is see if we can target this guy down below here. So I want to hold down the control key and see if we can target this guy. Yeah, so he can shoot through that doorway, but he's going to have a -2 because of he has to shoot through an ally. It's kind of a trick shot here. And it's not necessarily a sneak attack, so it's just going to be a standard ranged attack. So I'll do this double click here on the target on the actual attack roll, since this guy's already targeted. Oh yeah, so that's a hit, even with the -2. And now for the damage. Oh yeah, he took that guy out. One shot. So that goblin's now gone. So that was helpful. And then there's a little blood stain left over. So that takes care of that. And now I think he's going to move back over here. Maybe even try to hide as a bonus action. I don't know. We'll see. So wizard's not there yet. Cleric. Okay, cleric's going to take his turn on thumping this goblin. So instead of casting a spell, he's going to use his warhammer. He's going to use it single-handedly. He does have a shield. He's benefiting from the shield. So I'm going to take this damage or the attack roll, drag it on top of the goblin, and he missed. So he swung that big old hammer and basically missed. So this guy's kind of holding his own. He's kind of dodging, like ducking underneath their blows. And he's going to go in for another attack. This time, though, he's going to attack the folk hero, noticing how hurt she is. And he's going to try to take advantage of that. So he's going to take the scimitar and kind of slice it into the fighter. And that's a miss. So she was able to kind of move aside as he kind of scissored in the scimitar attack. So that was a miss. And then he's going to move over here. So he's still in the vicinity. He didn't get an opportunity attack. So we're going to move this down. Okay, so fighter, folk hero. Going to bring up her sheet again. Going to have her drag and drop the attack onto the target. Or you can do it over here in the combat tracker. Either way. This time she lands a hit. And this with a great sword. So it's probably cut him in half. We'll see. Yep, he died. So that took care of him right there. So that's it. So now what we'll do is we'll discuss terms here. Let's do a short rest. So we'll do the menu. And then I'm going to turn off the battle context menu for now, since we're not in the middle of a fight anymore. And then going to take and do a short rest. So go to menu. Go to rest and short rest. And then this fighter is going to elect to use their daily hit die. So if you just double click on this, that's your natural healing ability. So she pretty much healed everything. And then the cleric's going to do the same thing because they're taking a short rest. So he's going to use his natural healing ability. Yeah, so they both healed a little bit. They only got 1 point of damage left. They rest for an hour. Now let's say they want to loot the body. So there's at least 2 or 3 corpses around here. I think 3. So there's 2 here and 1 down here. So I'm going to go to modules. I don't have it loaded right now, but if you are inclined to add more stuff to your campaign, if you don't mind managing it. If I go to activation, I have a third-party module. This is the loot module, and what this is all of the potential loot that you might come across on a body or an NPC. So if you click on this and you go to tables, you can bring up this thing for goblins. You can roll on it a few times. So let's see, bugbear. Here's a goblin. So you can roll on this table 3 times and it will roll on other loot tables. So let's see what we got. So here's one parcel. Here's 2, and here's 3. So this is just random loot that you could potentially get from those goblins. So if you're gonna pay attention to looting and that sort of thing, you can use stuff like that. You can make your own too. And then what I'll do is in the party sheet, you got to make sure that your players are part of the party sheet, that they're on there when you start your campaign. So you want to make sure these guys are on there before you do anything else. And now what I'm going to do is go to the inventory part and take the loot and drag and drop this. So I might do this after the adventure or before the next one, but I'll drop these in there and it will sort out the content that's in there. And then when the players get on the table, if they're out of town or maybe they have someone they can trade with, this would be something that they can look at and decide if they want to act on this or not. So like they might keep the goblin teeth, but leave some of this other stuff like the broken material. They might leave those. So in this case, they might want to take the arrows and the gold tooth or the goblin teeth, but everything else they'd probably just leave it. But there is some scrap value, but you'll have to decide, what that is for you. So if they go back to Phandalin, let's say, and they wanted to cash this stuff in, it's set for 50%. In which case, they're going to get 50% of the value. But being that let's say they liberated the town before, maybe their reputation's a little higher. So Baratheon, or whoever his name is, the guy that runs the store, is going to give him 60% of value. So we're going to sell the scrap stuff. So we're going to keep, I'm just going to type the word keep for these things here because I don't want those to get sold. And then anything like this that has value will get sold, but we're only going to get 60% of the full value, but that's better than 50. So then one of the players kind of goes, well, you know, we risked our lives. We almost died. Can you give us a little bit more for it? So that was the human noble saying that. He's like, look, you know, we had some hardship there. I think we can get a little bit more for that, you know, if you don't mind. So what I'd have him do for role-playing wise is I'd have him roll a persuasion. He's got a pretty good chance of it. But Baratheon's been around. So Baratheon, or whatever his name is, the proprietary of the provision store, his challenge rating is 15. So if you roll a 15 or higher, you might be able to increase your take. So I will roll this in the dice tower, and then I would narrate this to my players as to what the success or failure was. So in this case, he rolled an 11, so that was lower than what was needed. So Baratheon's like, I'm sorry, guys, I'm tapped. So you're going to have to take 60%, take it or leave it. So then the dwarf goes, well, what do you know? He's like, he's not very happy. He's like, hey, you either give us that discount or I'm going to pop you in the nose. Okay, so this is probably be my last Hail Mary to make that, but it's going to be at disadvantage because he's being negative. So disadvantage on the roll, and he's going to do intimidation. He is proficient with it, but his chances of success are very low. So intimidation, going to roll this number and drop it in the dice tower, and I'll narrate whatever the results were. Oh my God, he dropped a 19, but it kept the 1. So what I would say there is Baratheon rolls up his sleeves and says, try it. And then he calls for help. He's probably got some big burly half-orc dude in the back waiting for this type of thing, like his box boy essentially. And he comes out and he says, is there a problem out here? And the guy says, yeah, this frickin' dwarf here wants more money than the stuff is worth. So the Baratheon says, you know, if you guys want to do business up in here, I suggest you take what I give you, or I'm going to give you a really bad reputation, and everything's going to cost more in this town. And then if you guys resort to violence, then that orc is going to come in there and kick some butt. So they're like, okay, fine, we'll take it. But this time, now he's only going to give us 50% because we gave him so much shit. So now we have to take 50%, and we don't get the bonus 10% in there. So that's what you get. So now when you're done with that, you're role playing and such, and justifying, you know, how much it's going to be and all that. Now you can sell the items. It took all that out of there, converted it to gold. All these things are going to be kept until somebody might want these arrows. So in this case, the human fighter or this folk hero fighter probably wants the arrows. So what I'll do is I'll assign her name to it, fighter, and then the goblin teeth, I think the rogue wants those, or the wizard. So I will put the wizard in there. So now what I'm going to do is sell the items, even though I'm not actually selling them. And then hit this down arrow, which is going to distribute and assign anything that's assigned. Is going to place it within the group. So now everything's cleared out except for 4 gold. So the 4 gold is left over. There's 5 players, so you can't divide it evenly. So what you can do is take that 4 gold, manually increase it. So instead of 4 gold, we can go with 40 silver or something like that, and then distribute that out. So now that will divide evenly. So now all the coins are distributed, made a little bit of change. Fantasy Grounds won't automatically do that conversion unless you have an extension or something. And then you hit this refresh to rebuild the party inventory. And then you're going to be able to see who's got what, and you know who's carrying what and how much shared wealth they have between them. you know, that sort of thing. So that's kind of how I would run that little scenario. I just wanted to show you some of the capabilities and such. So that wasn't too bad. And what's nice is I didn't have to bring in all of the characters at once. So that's something you may want to do in your encounters to stagger things out. So if you've got a lot of goblins, let's say you had like 10 of them, you might want to do it in like 2 or 3 groups, like a group of 5, and then maybe a boss and a couple of bodyguards. So that would be, let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8. There'd be 2 more. Those would be reserved. So I'd bring those guys in as replacements or as backups, or you know, some kind of reinforcement. So that's kind of how I would handle a big fight that has like 10 goblins. So instead of 10 goblins on the combat tracker at once, I would start with 5, and then maybe a few rounds in, I'd bring in the boss and his 2 bodyguards, and then if the goblins are being mowed through, like they're being killed a lot, I'd bring in the other reinforcements. And that's a better way to handle the combat tracker, because if you overload it with 10 different entries, if you get beyond that, it starts slowing things down, especially if there's a big complicated map and if you've got all this stuff going on. And generally speaking, I'll always have my characters in a big stack here, and that way when I need to look at them, they're not covering everything up. And when I click on this link here, it brings it up to the top of the pile so I can see what's going on. And that helps with managing the window so you don't have 50 gazillion things all over the map. And then at this point, I might introduce the extra players. So I might say, okay, the wizard's here now, and the human noble's now here. And they're helping them search around for the loot. That's where they got all the loot from. But I wouldn't necessarily let them process the loot until they got to a place where they can trade or rest. So they may want to just kind of cheap viewers, yeah, no doubt. But anyhow, this is just you know, one of the things that you might come across when you're running an adventure. And a lot of this stuff I'm showing you is applicable to a bunch of the rule sets that are out there, like especially the ones that are based on fantasy. You know, like Pathfinder kind of works similarly for awarding loot, and you can interpret how to use that tool as any way you like. I kind of like the role-playing thing that I was going through because that's fun, and I don't think I'd do that every time. I just would do it if it was a key moment in the adventure, or maybe there's a slow time where you didn't have a lot of stuff prepared. You can use that encounter with the store merchant and make it kind of fun. And kind of spice things up a little bit. And I like the idea that the dwarf tried to haggle with intimidation instead of persuasion, and he got shut down. The guy's like, come on over here. If you want to fight me, you know, he's going to roll up his sleeves and box him. And then the dwarf's like, oh crap, I wasn't expecting that. Then this big orc comes out of the back room and says, is there a problem? I was kind of like that. So that's the kind of fun that you can have with these things. You know, it's just kind of up to how you interpret it and what kind of effort you want to put into it. I believe that most of us have problem with time. I think that's the biggest resource that most of us do and don't have is time. So if you don't have the time for it, just run it as is. Don't have to add all this fancy stuff. If you got the time, you know, add the extra maps and the sound and all that stuff. And you just remember, the more you add, the more you have to manage. So it can get a little crazy if you add too much stuff. And this human noble here, you got to have pictures. Got to have token, at least one picture. So when you're running your group here, you want to make sure they have at least some sort of portrait. There's a better way to do this. If you have to do portraits for a lot of characters at once, you do it through the asset window. It's so much quicker than doing it like this, because this takes forever. It has to load each time, and that can be annoying. Like, it slows you down essentially. So what I would do in this case is I would probably lay out all the PCs and then assign the assign the token then. Because what'll happen is once you open up the assets and then you go to portraits, and then what you do is you find the folder, Fantasy Grounds Fantasy folder in this case, open that up. It's a lot quicker, a lot more responsive than doing it through the character sheet. And then what you do is expand that out, and then you bring up all your characters. So maybe you want to change some of this stuff out. So in this case, this was the rogue. So I'll swap that one out. The wizard doesn't have a token yet, so I'll grab the female wizard, I think it was. So that's easier to do it that way than doing it through the character sheet. So if you've got to do a bunch of these, or you're in a hurry and you don't want to sit there and individually do that through the character selection portal through the link, if you do it this way through assets and you just drag them to the character sheet, is way quicker. I found that out running a lot of one-shots. Like if you're doing a one-shot with a bunch of pre-gens, you've made up a bunch of characters and you have to assign those pictures. Doing that one at a time takes forever. I don't know why it's so slow, but it has to go, it reloads a library each time. If you do it through the assets, it loads it once and it's already cached, so you don't have to worry about it as much. But that's something I learned in running one-shots is, if you got a bunch of custom PCs and they don't have a portrait, that's the quickest way to do it. So that's basically, I think, all I got. I don't think, if there's anything else you guys want to see, let me know before I go. I mean, not in a big hurry. I just, I started off with showing the differences between the Lost Mine of Phandelver and Phandelver and Below, because they are different and the assets are not exactly the same. And the other thing is that you don't get pre-gens with Phandelver and Below like you did with the original adventure. They changed the Goblin Ambush encounter. There's some other little changes they made with some NPCs, so there are some differences between them. And I think if you load up both of them, you'll have access to whatever content you want to use. And earlier I was talking about the Sound Links pack. So if you have the Fantasy Grounds audio pack for Sirenscape, I have that loaded here. But it's for the original adventure. It's not for the Phandelver and Below. You can make your own links, or you can salvage the links that come, with the Lost Mine and reuse those. But you still have to set those up yourself. And this third-party module, this Monster Loot, there's one made for most of the official settings on the DM's Guild. And I believe this is, I think Grim Press took these over. I don't remember. But this is a handy tool, if you're going to run this adventure. This is the author, but the person who converted it was DM Domination and Thomas Carpenter. So they did the, conversion. But it's helpful because you can get on the, have that made for you and have it quicker. So, and they give you the requirements too. So that's kind of a handy tool. So if you're running like the Ream of the Frost Maiden or one of the official adventures, they have these monster loot things. So in case your players are into looting and such, they have that. So you can use that. And then I have other kind of Phandelver type related stuff. So if you're going to run a campaign and you want more content so you don't have to build your own. I mean, there's the loot, Lost Mines of Phandelver. I guess I got two versions of it. Here's sidekicks. So if you want some more NPCs, you want to run one of those as a sidekick character so that you can, in case someone doesn't show up, that's helpful. And then there's the Tavern Keeping, the Sleeping Giant, a Lost Mine of Phandelver companion. So if your players inherit the tavern, there's a thing about that helps you with that. And then there's other supplemental modules out there. So let's see what else we got here. That's Lost Mine. Let's do Phandelver. But there is a lot of content for older modules like this. So let's see, is there anything else? Not really. Okay. So this is just a kind of like additional stuff that you might want to use later on. But again, you can add too much stuff and it just drive you nuts. Just be way too much. So be careful with how much stuff you have loaded. If you need it, that's one thing. If you're not going to use it, there's no point in loading it up. So the sidekicks is Garrett, Good Barrel, Gundren Rockseeker, Milk the Goblin, Sildar Hallwinter, and a Wolf. So these are sidekicks. So you got a stat block here, and you got a link for the information and how to update them and stuff. So that's kind of cool. And if you have the extension, the friend zone, you can allow the players to run those as a sidekick if you want. But anyhow, this is just a preliminary kind of stuff, and I kind of showed combat a little bit and some things that can be done. And we have the map expanded all the way out instead of minimized. So I usually run them like this so I can move it around. But if you want to show the map more and not have it covered or being too small so people can't see it, then you can expand it and kind of run it as the background instead of having all this stuff. But also, if you're using a projector TV, that's another cool way to do it, is to do a player instance. You can sign in to this session and then join up, and you can use it as a kind of like your battle map. And if I right click and go to sharing, I can share this record. And then if I sign in as a player and connect to myself, I can look at it from the perspective of a player and have that on my TV or showing on the stream if you want to do it that way. And the other thing I've done is I want to show you guys something. So if you're going to run a stream, and this is my, the OBS thing. So I have a Sirenscape link here, which links to the address on this player. So this is the player address. So I hit copy there. And then in OBS, I added Sirenscape as a web source. So if I go to properties, you put in the sound here, or you put in the link, and then you can, the little graphic, you can decide if you want to, use that. And then you just hit close, and then here's the little graphic right here. And then what you do is this will become your volume for that particular stuff. So you have your desktop volume, your mic volume, and this would be the Sirenscape audio. So it'd probably turn it down about halfway. And that's how you add those so that when you're doing a stream, you have a separate volume there, and it's not all going into the same bus, because that can overwhelm the audio, and you can have more control over the volume that's going into it. So anyways, this is just kind of a preliminary thing. And then I was going to, with ChatGPT, I was going to take some of those supplements that I got from the DMs Guild. So this was the Phandelver and Below assets. And then I have some PDF resources that are used to help you add or refine. And this comes from the Heroic Maps map pack. I'll have that linked at the video, but this is kind of like updated maps and content for that. So I could take this and I'll drag and drop the PDF in here. And what I'm going to do is please analyze and gotta spell it right. Please analyze and parse the information from the attached PDF. I'll say if there are any tables, extract and create a rollable list. This way we can just import it. into Fantasy Grounds a lot easier. So what I'll do is I'll give it an example. This is the output that I really want. So here's the title. And then we're going to do the header, which is 1D, whatever the dice is, with a pipe separator, which is that straight line. And then this will be the result. Fix if you only have one. Oh, okay. If there are any tables, please analyze and parse the information from the attached PDF. If there are any tables, extract and create a rollable list. And here's the example. Example output. You misspelled if. Oh, okay, got it. If there are. Got it. Example output. Here's the title, here's the results. And then 0, 1. Always use 2-digit numbers, not single digit or 3. And then here's result 1. Something like this. Because if you do it this way, you can import it into Fantasy Grounds easier. Result 2. So this is just taking content from here, extracting it, and then reformatting it. We'll see if it does it. Sometimes it won't, sometimes it will. Yeah, here we go. So here's the table that you might use. Here's some traits for the Cragmaw goblins. Yeah, so that's helpful. Interesting items in a midden heap. So a big pile of crap, in other words. So these are just tables that you can use in the game that comes from that content. Which of your videos about AI would you recommend to start with if you have, to be honest with you, none of them, because they all are very focused on Fantasy Grounds. But if you're going to actually just start with AI itself, start watching YouTube videos. The main thing is learning how to word the prompts and to give it an example of your output that you're looking for. Yeah, I get that, but you still have to learn the nuances of prompting, because it's frustrating, because if you don't word it right, it's not going to give you the output that you're looking for. And that's the main thing, to be honest with you. Generating images, all that. So what I found out through experimenting, even before I started doing Fantasy Ground stuff, is that if you're not very literal and concise, you're going to have to re-ask it 50 times. And if you're using the free version of an AI tool, you're going to run out of iterances and you have to wait. So what you want to do is look at how other people are phrasing things. And I do have tools here, so those are in our Fantasy Grounds Academy. So if you want to, I have a section that has, like, for content creation, it has links to these tools. They kind of already have some of the verbiage and the PDFs involved, but it's still a matter of how you ask the question. And that's really what you want to do. So you got to learn the limitations of it, and you have to provide it with output, which is what I did up here. If you don't know what the output is, then you're not going to be able to ask it the right question. So this is the thing I asked, and then I gave it an example of the output. You don't do that, it's just going to give you whatever, and it'll give you a table. So I don't say table often. I'll say rollable list, because I found out that if you say table, it's going to make this into a formatted table instead of what you want. So in this case, this is just for, like, importing into Fantasy Ground. So I have it set up to where, it kind of knows, but I honestly don't even want this code, because that breaks what I'm trying to do. So what I'm going to say is reword, but with just plain text. because I don't even want that. And this is the kind of crap that you're going to deal with. This is what you want right here. You don't want all this stuff because it'll jerk you around until you get pissed off, and then you're just not going to want to use it. And that's kind of what you have to learn as to how to deal with it. In other words, so yes, learn how to prompt, and then come back to this, because you kind of have to know, or at least understand, what the format is, because that's really what you're trying to get, is a way to easy kind of copy and paste. And if you don't, this can get very annoying, and you won't want to do it. And I guarantee you, once you have to sit there and prompt it for an hour for one simple thing, that's just going to piss you off. And that's something I had to fight. It took me about a year or like 6 months to really get a good handle on prompting, but that goes into images and all that other stuff. But as far as Fantasy Grounds goes, you just got to kind of know the rule set and the type of text that you want it to put out, and it'll get closer for you. So this one would be deliveries that were meant for Phandalin clients. So if you were going to use this in Fantasy Grounds, you can actually bring this up, and we'll go to tables, and we'll make our own group. So we'll just say custom. We'll say custom tables. Just to have my own little group here in case, so they separate from the original ones. And then once you have that, see, there's another thing, is you got to learn how to use the tool too. So there's a lot of steps to it, but as far as that prompting goes, I would definitely just start messing around with it, getting used to the wording and the verbiage, because that's really where the work is. That's the magic of it. Once you understand that, then it gets easier to do this part of it. But if you're learning that as you're doing this, I mean, it's not a problem, but you're not necessarily going to get the output that you want. And that can be frustrating. And it just kind of depends on what you're trying to do too. But so this is just taking the tables off that PDF. And I recommend smaller PDFs because they don't like big ones. So don't try to feed it a 300-page PDF. It's not going to work. Keep it under 100 pages, and it'll do well. If you have a large PDF, just copy and paste it like in sections, and don't try to do the whole thing at once, because it runs out of tokens or memory. So if you're trying to do something that big, it's better to do it in chapters or something like that. If you're going to try to do it all at once, it's going to suck. I guarantee you. It's not going to be what you think, and it will piss you off. I'm going to guarantee you that. So you don't want that. Don't go there. You don't want it to. You don't want to do that too much. I mean, it's okay to be a little frustrated once in a while, but if you start getting that all the time, it's not going to be fun. And then you're also wasting your time. So, but this is the table that I was trying to put into Fantasy Grounds. And then you say delimited. Here's the name. Oops. The name of the table. And we're going to say a pipe separator, column in first row, header in first row. Yes, yes. Import. And there you go. So there's your tool to import those. So this is just something you might use to supplement, in your games. Now let's see if it will take any of the other PDFs. So I'll drag in a different PDF. So let's go with, see, was that chapter 1? There's chapter 2. I'm going to say the same thing, parse and create the rollable lists like the previous conversations, and formatting, because that formatting is the big key on Fantasy Grounds. You can't, to get it to extract it out of there is one thing, but see here it's doing that again. So what I want to do is reword this. So next time I'll say with plain text only. No, or I don't have to say no code. I'll just say, just do it that way. Yeah, so here's drinks that are available at the Stonehill Inn. So these are kind of useful. I mean, they're kind of simple, but at least, you know, you can make this drinks table, you can roll on it, and you can actually make items available so that people can buy stuff. So now that it's parsing through, you're going to ask it to fix those. Yeah, why is it doing that? I'll say use plain text only, not code. There we go. That's what I want, this thing type thing. So you can take that information from the PDFs and have it, you know, help you out with grabbing tables and stuff. But again, if you say table, it's going to make a table. So you got to be careful in how you word it. Like this 1d3 result, you can give it, like, if it's an odd number, just have it do 0, 0, roll again or something like that, if you don't mind. This has 5 results, so, you know, Fantasy Grounds can handle it, but it doesn't have an animation for a 5-sided dice. So, you know, there's stuff like that. So if you have an odd number, you can just say, like, the odd number out is just a 0, or, you know, basically roll again, or roll on another table or something like that. So, yep. So that's helpful. So I take all that information from those PDFs. It's being that they're relatively short. So this is like stuff that you can use to help you supplement your games. So this has adventure alterations in it. Pretty cool. Yeah, so these are mostly just tables and such. So what is this? This is Lost Mine of Phandelver DM resources. So let's see where's that at? That's the instructions. Where's this DM resources at? Yeah, I have to find out where that is, but nonetheless, this is helpful because you can go through here and let's see if that's the one. Yeah, so this is the ambush. Okay, so I'll have it do that one. Let's see. I want it to, I'll say parse all of the information, but information in plain text only. I don't want it to Okay, so that's what I had to do, is tell it to make sure it's only plain text. See, parg is probably not. Let's see if it. So it's only doing the tables right now, so let's see if it does anything else. Also pull out the alternative adventure info, because I don't see that. I'll just see tables like this stuff here. Alternative events. Let's make sure I say that. Events. Gotta get the right table name or the right information, because I said the more literal and the more complete your request is, the better output you're going to get usually. What's it doing? Oh, it's just redoing the tables. Let me take a look at that, see if it's actually doing it right. So these are the ambushers, melee fighters, ranged fighters. Let me see if it's doing that right. Yeah, melee fighters, ranged fighters. So it's saying 1d6, but then it's saying 1d3 here. So it split this up into two tables, so we might have to fix that. And I don't think the names are right. I think it's not translating the names that they assigned to those. Yeah, Fleabo. Yeah, I don't think that came out. So Fleabo is, or actually, what is that? Yeah, it is doing it. Bebzu, Minflee. I think it's doing it. Sometimes you have to check that because it doesn't always translate right. It's not perfect. Yeah, Bezwo, Mindful. Yeah, it's doing it right. Let's see if it pulled out any of that alternate stuff. Ambush. Oh, it assigned it as a table. It didn't have to do that, but that's fine with me. I don't mind as long as I got the data. That's all I care about. Anyway, so that's just some use cases so you can kind of, help build your content. Like I said, these were the tokens that I was working on for the game, so that when you put them on the map, these 3D ones, you can actually see them, because this little outline here is semi-transparent, and when you have it on the battle map, you'll be able to see it better. And that's why they use pogs, because those have usually have an outline so you can kind of see better. So anyways, that's pretty much all I got. I think I've been rambling enough. If you guys, you guys want anything else, let me know. But that's kind of the gist of this. So what I'll do is I'll take the rest of these and put them into ChatGPT and strip out the content I want, and then put those into Fantasy Grounds. And then you can use it to supplement your adventures. But that's just an example of the type of stuff you can get into. There's a whole, this thing can get out of control. You end up with like 50,000 things. You just got to pick what's important to you and maybe do it a chapter at a time or a session at a time. But it's easier, honestly, in the long run if you can do it all at once, because you're not switching back and forth. But you may not have the time to do the entire roster of the NPCs, so pick your battles. All right, guys and girls, that's enough for today. I'm going to end the stream. Leave comments, whether you hate me or not. I don't care. It helps the algorithm. And you guys have a wonderful week, and you guys see you around. And don't forget our Fantasy Grounds Academy, the celebration for our Founders Day Weekend 7 is the 26th to the 28th. So if you guys want to present something, you want to run a game, you want to showcase what you're working on, anything like that, get a hold of me in our Discord, and I will try to work with you, and maybe we'll do a stream together or something like that. Or I'm definitely going to run a couple small one-shots. I think we're going to do the Uber Shrike Death Arena. So it's basically all combat. You're just going to be fighting monsters. That's all it is. And it's pretty brutal. So if you like role play and all that fun stuff, it may not be for you. But I'm going to run one of those, I think, and kind of get people a chance to play and have fun too. Kick some